Mrs. Flood is the mysterious neighbour of Ruby Sunday, and at the end of the episode, The Church on Ruby Road, she looked at the camera after seeing the TARDIS take off and said,
"Never seen a TARDIS before?"
In today's video, I'd like to air some of my theories as to who Mrs. Flood really is. Is she a new character, or is she a returning character from the classic series? So as soon as I saw this episode, and as soon as I heard her say, "Never seen a TARDIS before," the first thing I thought of was an interview that Ncuti Gatwa had recently done where he was talking about what he'd like to do as the Doctor. He mentioned that he'd like to go up against the Rani, he mentioned that he'd like to fight the Daleks, etc. But I want to focus on what he said about the Rani. Now, the Rani is a renegade Time Lord from the classic series, only really appearing in, I think, about 3 episodes, but was essentially as evil as the Doctor is good. She was a renegade Time Lord who focused mainly on science and genetics, and essentially she was kind of like the Master, except probably worse. Now, we haven't seen her since the classic series, and we've seen many Time Lords come back. We saw Rassilon, we saw basically all the Time Lords from Gallifrey, we saw the Master, but we haven't seen other Time Lords such as Omega, the Meddling Monk, the Rani, etc. And I'm really thinking that this could potentially be the Rani just because of what Ncuti Gatwa had said in a recent interview. Now, would this be good? Would this be a good thing for the show? Well, I think Russell T Davies is kind of mirroring what he did when he took over Doctor Who in 2005. The Doctor is once again the last of the Time Lords. We saw the Doctor going through the universe as the last of the Time Lords, mentioning it to Rose and to other people that he come across along the way. It wasn't until the 2nd or 3rd season when we finally found out that the Doctor wasn't the last of the Time Lords and there was another one who was still alive, and that was the Master. Now, I don't think that this is the Master or the Mistress, Missy, because we've had the Master quite a lot over the last 10 years, at least a lot more than what we did have in the classic series. I think it's time for a switch up, and I think Russell T Davies knows that. He's going to mirror what he did in the first season, or the first run of Russell T Davies, and he's going to mirror that, not exactly, but it was a formula that worked. He's the last of the Time Lords, and we're going to find out eventually that he's not the last of the Time Lords, and oh look, here's another Time Lord. And the Rani just makes a lot of sense. That is theory number 1. Now, theory number 2 is a little bit more out there, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. So I made a video last year because we had a leak that there was going to be a returning companion for the 60th anniversary special, and I got very excited thinking, oh my god, that means it's going to be Susan. Now, Carol Ann Ford is in her 70s or 80s right now. So I was very excited for the possibility of her returning, because it would probably be the last time she could ever do it, realistically, just because of her age and just because of... I don't know what she's like in real life, what her health is like, etc., and we never know. I mean, look at Bernard Cribbins. He was very fortunate enough to appear in the 60th anniversary special, but then passed away shortly after. The same could happen with Carol Ann Ford. But do we really need Carol Ann Ford to play Susan? She's from Gallifrey. She's the granddaughter of the Doctor, which means she could potentially have regenerated at some point. Now, she was never actually a Time Lord. She was always a Gallifreyan, but being the granddaughter of the Doctor, who we know is the timeless child now, and who always had the ability to regenerate, he could have passed that down to her. So even though she was never indoctrinated into the Time Lord society and given regenerative powers, she could still have them. And when we last left her, she was on Earth living with the 2 teachers that she met in the 1960s. Now, I've always just imagined she would have just grown old and died on Earth because as a Gallifreyan she cannot regenerate, so she just wanted to live on Earth. But if she is the granddaughter of the Doctor and has regenerative powers, she probably would have regenerated at some point. She probably would have died of natural causes and then regenerated. Now, whether or not she was then able to go back in time, maybe she made a TARDIS because she is very intelligent. Maybe she found a TARDIS. Who knows? The specifics I cannot get into because this is not for me to come up with. This is all on Russell T Davies and the writing team. But maybe she then went back in time to relive her time on Earth. And there's kind of a third theory that also ties into this, that Ruby Sunday is actually the daughter of Mrs. Flood. And if she is also Susan, that would make Ruby Sunday the Doctor's great-granddaughter. And because of timey-wimey shenanigans, she went back in time to watch her daughter grow up with her foster mother, and then just so happened to see the Doctor and was not surprised when she saw a TARDIS. It's all very, very strange. It's a very strange theory, but it's one that's been going around my head ever since I seen it yesterday, and I don't know which one I believe. Is it the Rani or is she Susan? Now, I'd love it to be Susan, just because the Doctor is alone now. He's mentioned it in this episode that he's adopted, he doesn't know who his parents are, and he doesn't have anyone. So this episode was all about family. Ruby Sunday obviously was adopted by her foster mother, who had also fostered 33 other children, and it was very family orientated. And as soon as the goblins kidnapped Ruby, that changed the foster mother's entire life. Maybe it's a hint towards the Doctor isn't as alone as he thinks, and he does have a family out there somewhere. That's the kind of thing that I want it to be. Because the Doctor should never be alone. The Doctor should always have an anchor and have someone, a place that he can call home. A place doesn't necessarily have to be a physical location, but a place that you can call home could be around people that you love. Now, the Doctor is a traveller. He's never in one place at one time, but as long as he's around the people that he loves and that he can trust, i.e. family, then he is home. And that's something that I want to see for the Doctor. Not just having companions that come and go, but actually having a stable family that he can run to or go to when he needs them. That could be the future of Doctor Who, but then again, it could be the Rani, in which case it's going to be an evil Time Lord once again. Now, I love the Time Lords as villains because they were never really the good guys. Even in the classic series, they were always kind of pompous asses. And I don't know. My first experience with Doctor Who was from 2005, so I've only watched a handful of episodes from the classic series. But every time the Time Lords have been in, even the new series, they've never really been the good guys. The Doctor just fantasizes about them, and in his mind, they are the greatest race in the universe, and he fantasizes and makes them out to be better than they are because that's how he chooses to remember them. But in reality, they're not all that good. And when they're evil, like the Master or the Rani, they are pure evil. And that is something I love with characters in any TV show, whether it's science fiction or not. I love looking at the psyche of someone who is evil. But let me know in the comment section down below, do you agree with anything I've said? Do you agree with my theories, or do you have your own? Leave it in the comments down below, and I will see you next time.